Hi, my name is Kamila, and welcome to the next episode of Humans of AI, where together with my guests from business and academia, we try to demystify what AI is and what it's not, hopefully making this whole concept a bit more digestible. Today, we are welcoming Elena Poughia, the founder of Data Economics and Data Natives. Elena is a creative and practical, purpose-driven professional with an entrepreneurial mindset. She has an incredibly diverse experience working in art, tech, and business. That makes her one of the very few people with the most interesting perspective on what it means to be human in a data age. Hi, Elena.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
How did it happen that from graduating in literature and modern and contemporary art, you went into technology and you founded a Data Economy magazine, and then you created this amazing Data Natives conference? How this transition happened?
Yes, so I would say like the interesting journeys, like we always imagine that the journey when it comes to our lives would start and be very linear, and that we will go to university, we will graduate with a degree, and then that will be the work that we will do for the rest of our lives. At least that was the boomers generation hypothesis. For me, I actually have done a lot of different things. So I started business, which is the irony of things, because now I am an entrepreneur. But I wanted something more for my personal development. So I want to do something that would really be fulfilling for me as a person. So that's why I decided to do art history first. I did a short course in London, and then I moved to do a master's of modern and contemporary art. It was great to see the world through these lenses, because when it comes to art and history, I think that gives you a very good perspective of how culture, how civilization evolved, how human and society are. So it's quite humanitarian, right? And it also gave me very good tools of how to communicate, how to write. And I think I did get a very good understanding of even psychology and marketing insights of how to actually, how to position ourselves. And the funny thing is, the way I got into tech, I mean, I've always been, I would say since a kid, we grew up with technology. I've always been very curious about technology, and very curious about, social media. I was like, after school, I would always come home and play with my computer, like discovering the world through Internet Explorer at the time, like the really familiar sound of the internet connecting, those days. So I was always very curious. So when after my studies in art history and modern and contemporary art, I returned to Greece, where I got involved in a lot of digital art initiatives. So that's why I started co-founded with some other people my first company to execute in digital art festival and digital art and music festival. So I was really interested in digital art, and basically what I really liked about digital art was the way that how it was made. So mainly it was done by developers and graphic designers, and also the commentary on society that it made. So for example, like I think now a very big topic when it comes to AI, it's data ethics. So back then there were a lot of artists that I was working with, or that I was following their progress, that had to do a lot with what's happening to our data, how is data collected, the ethics around it, how, all of these topics that now are actually mainstream, or becoming mainstream according to me, like basically data commodification, data monetization, predictive analytics, like now in a lot of industries that is becoming the norm. So back then for me it was more like a philosophical and existential quest that slowly turned into what now is Dataconomy and Data Natives. Dataconomy is the media platform where As the name suggests, we talk around how data science is shaping our economy and connecting those two dots. And data natives is really for the millennial and Gen Z generation. How are these people connecting? How are they interacting? How are they communicating? And what does that mean around it? So this is how these two things came about. And I would say it's like for my general fascination with technology and society and how much impact it has on us human beings.
Right. Sounds like an amazing journey. And I know that you also had your take on fighting, in a way, COVID. You've done a Hack Corona. I saw that you gathered 1,700 hackers, and it was beginning of the outbreak in March. Like, how did you go about it? Like, no one knew what's happening, and it was a completely new situation. What have you produced with like during this hackathon?
So indeed, as you understand already from as a pattern for the things that I like to do is that I really like
you just jump into deep water.
Exactly. Jump into things, but also really following, I would say, what's happening, so like really going with the current vibration of like the universe, to put it romantically.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, so with Hack Corona, it was just the weekend before the lockdown, when or in Germany, before we had to start working from home, when we were thinking, I think from our sides, and for me at least, it was very fulfilling to know that I'm somehow doing something to find a solution, because I think otherwise I would have, I did it for my own sanity. I think otherwise I would have been depressed. And I know there's like, I've seen it from my friends as well. There were two separate groups that they evolved. Basically, the ones that they just focused on themselves, so self-care, doing like everyday yoga routines, or really mind their diet. Exactly. And then there are people like me who instead, like, I just dwelled into the cause. So the cause for me was very important. So yeah, so essentially what happened was we gathered in the office. Actually, one of our youngest team members, she was sharing how like, what can we do? How can we help the elderly? How can we help, I have a couple of friends also who started like doing other projects, like the open source child project was one of them here in Berlin, from a friend who who has a foundation called Hippo AI. We also work together very closely with a company that focused on data protection and privacy for citizens, Poly, that they also started their foundation, or they were one of the founding partners of both ends, which also was around privacy and in healthcare, at the beginning at least. And other similar initiatives, the open source medical devices. And we basically saw around us that there were a lot of things like that, coming to life. And we thought, how can we contribute? So our contribution to this was to start the Hack Corona initiative. So the Hack Corona was actually only the beginning, because we started it ourselves, actually together with another partner, who also did a lot of hackathons, Elena Poughia from Israel. We started this Hack Corona series here in Berlin. And we worked with a lot of other affiliations, like Hacking Health, which is an international non-profit organization, Bayer, who supported us in this, Charité. So we did a couple of editions as Data Natives Hack Corona. And then so one initiative was here in Berlin with Bayer and Hacking Health. The other one was with the Greece versus Virus, which is an initiative from three ministries of Greece. So we also looked at it from that angle. And also we did a collaboration, the Easter hack, with Hacking Health and Charité. And then actually we embarked on an even bigger journey with the EU versus Virus community. So the EU versus Virus community was initiated by the European Commission at the end of April, around that time. And then we did a huge hackathon, probably the biggest one that you can imagine. It was 25,000 participants, but that's not what makes it the biggest. It's the fact that we had 2,000 projects that were submitted.
Wow.
And those 2,000 projects, we selected, the jury members selected about 120 And those 120 then continued to what we call the matchathon, which is a completely new format where you could connect the participants, the winners, with partners together to work together. And now all of these 120 projects together with the partners and more partners have moved to the European Innovation Council. So just to like cut a long story short, you asked me essentially what has happened afterwards, what happened with the solution, right? Back to your original question. So from all of these initiatives, I would say, taking it backwards, the EU versus virus one, the 120 solutions are now in the European Innovation Council, and they receive mentorship, and they receive coaching and business services, which is really a unique opportunity for them. And some of those solutions, you know, they are focused on the COVID-19 specifically, but some of them are actually tackling the crisis overall. So there's one called Break Even from Sweden, one solution that they just started as a company now, which is specifically focused on helping. Okay, I think it annoys me, so let me just close.
Okay, no worries. I don't hear it, but go on.
Okay, I talk a lot, clearly.
That's okay.
So what I was saying is, like, from these 120 solutions, Break Even, one of them was from Sweden. They started actually as a project that spinned off, and now they made a company. And what they're trying to do is helping companies break even and not close. Okay. So it specifically helps companies that they are struggling at the moment to raise the funds, either by crowdfunding or by supporting, you know, by local communities, which is great, right? And this is more for saving the economy. There were other solutions. That's just one example from the 120. There were other solutions that they were tackling the issue, not necessarily only from the perspective of the, you know, of COVID-19, but also the economy, of work, of, you know, there were 6 domains. And that's from EU versus virus. Then if you look at what we did in Greece, for example, we just recently had an award ceremony because MSD, the big pharmaceutical company, the branch in Greece, partnered up with the Ministry of Health. In Greece, they found a really useful solution, which was what that came out of HaCorona, called Assistant Volunteer, which helps managing the volunteers for COVID-19. So the Ministry of Health in Greece, they had a big call for volunteers. They gathered 10,000 volunteers, and now with this solution and with the support of MSD, so really a really good example of the private sector coming together with the public sector to boost, you know, to help overcome this in civic society, these difficulties. Yeah. And from our side, from HaCorona here in Berlin, there's also a lot of projects. I mean, actually, one of them that was a winner at the EU versus virus, XT BioE. They came also at the HaCorona event, the first one that we did, and basically now have gone from hackathon to hackathon, and now they have opportunities to help. They specifically help with vaccines, and they will potentially might play a role in finding a solution out of this whole crisis. So there's a lot of, I mean, I would say there's a lot of interconnectedness with all of these hackathons, and for sure, from my side, it really is helpful to really make a difference in some way and at some capacity to what has been going on.
Yeah, I think like the most beneficial part of what you are creating is giving the normal, let's say, citizens connection with the government or with the like bigger entities which can take it further, and amazing, like you've done this in amazingly short time. Usually it takes ages to even start talking. But yeah, well done. So how do you think the whole pandemic changed the perception of people's identity, and like how how people see themselves? And obviously there are so many aspects of feeling alienated. Like, what do you think, being in data, maybe you can support it with what you've seen?
So I think a lot of people have been calling this the new normal. and I think like for me for sure, what has happened is that it has definitely connected us more with ourselves up to an extent. It has created like it was an enforced slowness in a way, slowness of how, I mean, we used to travel so much, we used to be out so much, I don't know, like I think like everything was moving so fast that we didn't really take a time to really appreciate. Yeah, exactly, appreciate and really like introspection of what was going on. So I think on one hand it really connected us to ourselves, but then it's something also that I was noticing, and I guess maybe for me, from my side, always considering myself a data native, it was totally normal. But I see people now, like it forced a digital transformation for people. It basically now it changed, and that's why it's called the new normal. It changed how we perceive the world and how we do things. Now, for example, remote work is totally acceptable. Yeah. No one considers it a hurdle or difficult. So everybody can work from anywhere, and they know that. I mean, the professions that they can do that, of course. Yeah. There's some professions that you cannot do that, but for professions that mainly you use your laptop now, it's completely normal not to be at the office. And I think that will bring a new normalcy there. In terms of like how we use technology and all the things that we can do with technology, I think there's another level of understanding of how to utilize technology. It really has created like normalcy when it comes to remote intimacy, right? So I used to make phone calls with, without camera, and now it's like I want to take with the camera. It's as if I'm even having like small small one-on-ones with people and friends. So completely normalizing that aspect. And I think that's also something that makes a big difference in how we are communicating. Also with business transactions, I think like basically I live in Berlin, and Berlin was not accepting credit card payments until basically COVID. Yes. And there's a meme that makes a joke about it, because like what has brought digital transformation to your company? The CEO, COVID-19, yes. It's COVID-19, yeah. Because it is COVID-19. It has it has in a way, there's always some positives out of it. So really, it will change a lot of things permanently. And for sure, when it comes to what you said about governments, now I think there's like a sense of agility. There's a sense of let's make things. Let's react faster to things. Yeah. Let's take other solutions. Let's transform faster. Let's change our ways and the way that we do things faster, so that we can accommodate civic society. So I think like it would affect, it is affecting in all levels, and those are just some examples of how it's affecting, and how it makes our life different, and it will continue making our life different.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you said, it kind of forced lots of companies to push for digital transformation, the real one. I spoke with many, when I speak with many senior leaders, many of them are telling me pre-corona, pre-pandemia, they always thought of those people who wanted to work remotely as slackers. And right now they realize that actually the productivity didn't drop or even got better, and they themselves are saving so much time. So they are now they now became the advocates of working remotely. So many things happened which are in a way good, if you can say that. Exactly. So I know that another area which you are very vocal about is the right communication of technical information to non-techies. And as a non-techie yourself, you are often sharing advice how to do it, so both groups understand each other. So how do you, what's your advice, and how do you help others to communicate properly, to be understood?
So that's a good question. So I guess I suppose there's three aspects to it. One is about, as you mentioned, because I'm a non-techie, I also want the information to be made comprehensible for me. Because I think that a lot of the times, you notice also with a lot of software as a service companies that basically they develop the solution to that point where if you're not part of the industry, then you don't really understand what's going on. And I think on that note, something also related with COVID-19 and how society is changing is that because so far it was okay because this then became a B2B. So it's a B2B relationship. So those software as a service companies, they would try to attract other businesses who would understand and get pretty much like the level of detail or the level of complexity of the solution. But I think now what's happening also in the world, because we are working remotely, because business is changing, because of digital transformation, it's no longer B2B, it's B2C. So you also want the individual to understand your technology or to understand what they're working on. It's, I guess, like what Apple did with the personalized computer, right? This is like one example of B2C. So it used to be that computers were all in the office, but now everybody's using a computer. So just one example. So I guess it becomes increasingly important that non-technical people, so people who don't necessarily work on the back end, can comprehend the front end. And I think it's related with this one. For me, it's this aspect that it's a B2C world now. The other thing is that it's related with how can you communicate so that it's not only about the how, but it's also about the why. The why this technology exists and why does it make my life different and it's helpful. And also because, I mean, also from my background on what I do, basically Data Natives is a community of techies and non-techies. And for the techies, it's important to understand what tools to use if they don't know and they haven't used it, but also for the non-techies. And a lot of these technologies are becoming more mainstream and more utilized in a wider spread. So it should be like for non-coders or non-data scientists to be able to at least understand either the business value or the societal value, or to be able to have different layers. Of course, like in some cases you do need the very, very technical, but when it comes to communicating to the wider world, it should be easily comprehended. So I suppose that those are the reasons why I thought that this is very important. And of course for me, like I always need let's say a translator, so someone who can explain this, or I need to do research around it so I can understand it. But actually it's not only me, it's my team mainly who's doing that, because we have the website, which is with a lot of contributors, they're writing about it, and also a big editorial team that actually takes this information and then breaks it down. And yeah, I mean, it is important, I think, for us to understand what we are communicating, but also for people with different expertise and different layers that would need to use technologies to understand it. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, I'm sure. And expanding on that, I think right now you see more human face of many technological companies, right? Like people kind of let others, like strangers, into their homes. You see so many like personal almost videos of representatives of some big corporations. You never kind of felt connected to them other than what the media or like the personal perfectly tailored PR was giving you. Right now you see humans, you see people behind those brands, right? So that's
exactly the human face of AI, as you also mentioned, exactly. Which I think it's also the AI has been demonized, well, because it's the unknown and we don't know what it is, but also because of how the perception of what AI would mean if it comes to life, or if we make it happen. Because I mean, we're still talking more about machine learning rather than artificial intelligence. But still, I think exactly it's important to put a human face on it and to actually be able to communicate it in a way that
And connect.
That,
Yeah.
exactly.
And not be afraid of asking questions, right? Because as you said, so many things it's a hype basically, right? Like you want to know what it does and what are their limitations as well. And if you see the human behind the brand, maybe you can be more brave to ask questions. So yeah, let's go in deeper into the angle of ethics in AI. So why do you think talking about it is so important?
Yes. So actually, to make a connection also with what you said before, because I mentioned for three things, and the third thing I did not mention it. So the third thing I think which is important and what makes a non-techie to be able to talk about techie stuff in at least a fundamental easy level is the fact that, and I will connect it also with the ethical AI, is the fact that actually when it comes to when it comes to the structure of a team, a data science team, a data engineering team, the aspect of making that team work are fundamentally related to the organizational structure. It's based on more like soft skills rather than hard skills. That's what makes actually a team work more. So you can in a way relate to it because of the human aspect of it. So when we're talking about, yes, there's in every profession there's a specific things that are very they're very much related with that profession, and of course one person needs to be specialized. But when it comes to any kind of organizational setting, it actually becomes quite, I wouldn't say universal, but quite similar. There's a lot of similar aspects to it. And then that's also why it's important to talk about ethics in AI, because when, of course, like as in every civilization, every society, we also need to set the standards, right? And when it comes to data science or when it comes to machine learning, the people now working on these technologies and working on this data, they are the ones that set the standards for the future. So they need to have responsibility. The same way that a lawyer takes an oath that, you know, they will do their profession at the best standards. The same way that a doctor takes an oath because they need to make sure that, you know, because they have responsibility towards their patients. Similarly, a technical person nowadays, they're creating the foundation of our society, of our, you know, of our software, the software exactly as our society of how it will be in the future. So that's why it's important not to be biased in the data, or at least to be as transparent and open as possible as to what data did you use in order to conclude to something. You need to be able to, you know, to give your references, to be able to cite your references in your hypothetical paper, that, okay, I got that data set and that's why this was the result of it. Or I created this automated machine to solve this problem with this solution. It has to be explainable, basically. And I think it's important that this discussion happens now, and data scientists and technologists understand the responsibility that they have towards, you know, towards our societies, because they are the ones right now that shaping this technology moving forward. And that's why I think it's very important. So ethics as part of the conversation are very crucial, and they're crucial in different ways. I think, for example, GDPR in Europe has been one of the fundamental ways to protect citizens from the usage of their data without their consent. I think for me, it's very important that we are as open and transparent about what data we collect, how we collect it, and how we use it. That the citizen is, you know, has their own data if they want to, and they would be able to know where their data is and how it's been used. And really, on a micro level, I know it sounds silly, because on a micro level, if you think about it, okay, well, they have my data, and it's my data, you know, up to an extent, it doesn't make that much difference. But if you look at it on a macro level, and then they put you in a specific stereotype, or they, you know, you are part of, like, you're labeled in a specific way, then there's more prejudice. There's like a continuation of stereotypes. There's lack of diversity, lack of inclusivity. And of course, like, it's all about, like, you being able to own your own data if you want to.
Being in control.
Exactly. Yeah.
You just answered 3 of my next questions. Not really good. Like good answers, but not really good because I have less. But yes, as you said, like it's very important to take care of bias, because right now we are training the algorithms like using the real-time data, and like by nature humans are biased, right? So we have to make sure that we are incorporating some, like the good bias, right? Sometimes you want to enforce certain behaviors, like for example giving more, like women more visibility, right? To let them progress with careers. That's the same thing which we have to do in a way with incorporating the good bias in the data. Do you have any like thoughts about this, or have you seen any like interesting initiatives happening around this?
So basically you're saying like it's the same way as positive discrimination, basically.
Yes.
That it's okay to be discriminating as long as you are somehow like fixing an imbalance in the system.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've seen, I know of, excuse me, this brought to mind a hackathon again that I was a part of last year, which was about diversity in in general. And I think it was 2 years ago, and it was organized by T Labs or Deutsche Telekom or T Systems. One of those three, they're affiliated somehow. Yeah, all of these guys. So, and there was one very interesting proposal, which actually was about positive discrimination. Essentially, when it comes to receiving, I think like one of the most discriminatory places is HR, right? So how you're prioritizing the CVs. I mean, in some instances, they also had photos of the person, which could be really discriminatory, because then you basically might be making your decision based on the person. And of course, it's again like unconsciously, you're usually hiring someone that looks like
similar,
you, or that they're similar to you. So you're either gonna hire I mean, and that goes in all levels, right? I mean, if you are a middle class person, then you will hire a white middle class person. If you are I don't know, if you're a woman, you will prefer a woman, and so forth and so forth. So this is the thing. So what the solution was, that how about putting at the top of the CVs women of color, and then everybody else. So then you first look at those CVs before you reach at the bottom. Yeah, I mean, that's a solution, I guess. This is like a way to overcome the problem. I think this kind of overfixation also it's happening with, with different legislations. I'm in Germany, so I know, for example, that they are aiming to increase the women participation in board of directors. So they're forcing big companies to actually always have a woman. I think a specific percentage of how many women they should have in the board of directors to increase the number, right? I think right now there's only 3%. They want to reach 30%, which I think makes, it's a good move. But in general, I think it is this kind of overfixation that in a way we need, right? So the feminists always said about that, like, in order to actually have equality, you need to have women run the world first. I don't know how much I agree with this. I'm a feminist, but I don't know how much I agree with this. But I do see elements of, if you don't speak up, if you don't like really push like Black Lives Matters, if you don't go to the streets and really protest and turn it into an opportunity of everybody knowing about it, then I don't know how it will touch people that are unaffected by it. And that's the thing. This is the problem with this kind of biases. You don't necessarily see it unless you are from the other side. So if you are in the mainstream and you've always been in dominant culture, you might not be able to see this. The same way that we don't see our whiteness. I was blinded to it by it until I didn't even see the problem until repeatedly,
media and
hearing about it. Exactly.
Yeah.
So like, and this is just one example. And you don't see discrimination unless you are discriminated against. So yeah, I think like a level for sure there should be, that people should be more conscious about it. More, this is, I think, the word, like being more conscious would change. And this is when it comes to data science and AI ethics. The consciousness needs to change. And also learning about this thing, constantly learning, constantly being informed in order to be able to bring a shift. And of course, when it comes, sorry to
No,
interrupt,
go on.
when it comes to the data science teams, right? How can you like, it's the same thing, like how can someone make products for women unless they have a woman in the team? How can you, for example, know what a woman would need biologically unless you have someone in the team that would actually understand that aspect? And I think that's the same thing with, you know, with minorities and people of color, and like you can't understand the aspect unless you also diversify your own team, diversify your own data, be able to, like, you know, to have these people included in, so that you can actually be able to have an opinion on it, or to work with the data in a specific way.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. So you obviously see the in talks the duality of AI, right? Like it can be used for so many good things, but some companies can abuse it, right? So what do you think? Or there's this example of companies. I think Germany has different level of data privacy than some other countries, but there are some software companies which allow employees to take, or like give the tools for employers to take screenshots of their employee workstation every 30 seconds, for example, so you can see if someone is working, if someone is, you know, there. So what do you think can be done, maybe from like legislative bit, to prevent abusing the power of AI, or like the technology in general?
That's a good question. Yes, you got me at a point where I'm like, I need some time to think and formulate my answer. I guess this is why this goes back to the standards of technology usage. I guess this is why we need to create principles, right? To create like a set of principles that would set the tone when it comes to how we use these technologies. As an employer myself, I understand why, for example, with the example that you gave, why would an employer or a boss would like to do random checks to make sure that people work? Also, in some companies for a long time, they forbid the usage of different social media tools. Like you wouldn't be able to log in Facebook, for example, from the office. I suppose like with this stuff, there should be two layers, right? There should be the one that it should be used everywhere. The principles, as I say, like 10 principles of how data should be collected, how what are the foundations of ethical AI, what are the foundations of explainable AI, like how can people obtain their information, etc., etc. And then there should also be specific, like company to company, because this kind of random checks, they are checks that they're happening at companies, right? So the checks that the company set the tone and decides on how to do. And of course, the most important thing is that there's consent, right? So that people know that this will happen. But when you are at work, I also don't think it's I don't think that it's a stretch to have these random checks. Now, if that happens without your permission, or it happens because your camera is on and someone is recording you, that's different. That goes to a different point. But if you're at work and and this is just for your boss to make sure that you are performing the tasks that you said, or that this is, yeah, ideally there's trust to the point where things like that are not necessary. But I don't think that I don't think that we are at the point as humans there yet. So to ask that from AI would also be contradictory. And I think another reason why I think we're so afraid of AI is because, well, we are creating it, right? And as everything, it can have, that humans create, as everything that exists can, if you put it out in the open, it can be misused.
Yes.
And it can be also used for the good. So that's why we need to create the parameters to make sure that it's used for good as much as possible, but we need to be prepared for it to be misused, as everything, because and I don't like this kind of duality, there's like, because you also mentioned there's a duality, good or bad, and I think that's, for example, with both ends, that's the kind of narrative that we're trying to avoid. Both ends, this non-profit organization that I mentioned before, because it's not either or, it should be both ends. Like you can actually have it's a gray area, you can have more than one options. But of course, like, you should always take into consideration how human behavior, or how the how people will take advantage of it. But that's why even if you see law and legislation, it always constantly updates itself, because it changes. It's not a static thing. It's not like, okay, so now we wrote it down and it's gone. No, it just builds up to it based on other examples and how people use it. So
it's tricky thing to tackle. So since you've been running, I don't know how many years you've been running the data magazine for, the data economics magazine for. Was it
5 years now? Yeah, okay. It's been one. Yeah.
So it's so it's a good question to ask. So what do you observe around like other media portraying the challenges of AI? Do you think the mass media is reporting the challenges correctly, or there should be some, and the ethics of it, or there should be some like different angle which is not being really mentioned?
Well, so when it comes to data and AI, no worries. And
my computer will die soon. Sorry, go on.
No worries. So when it comes to data and AI and Dataconomy, it's one of the top 10 AI magazines right now in the world, according to Industry Wired, because we're tackling this though from a very specific angle. So the data and AI topic, and as you mentioned, it has now gone to mainstream media. So Financial Times, The Economist, Forbes, they are all covering also data and AI as a topic, because it's no longer it's no longer something that only technical people do and talk about, but it's also becoming part of the society, and how the society now would work. So from our side, and the angle that we took was related more to the new and latest information for technical people to understand what are the trends, how is it going, and what news they should follow. And then also at the same time for business professionals and people who work in the industry, but they're not necessarily technical, to also see the benefits of it. I think like a lot of mainstream media is covering also the societal aspect that we are covering we're also covering through our conference. I mean, when it comes to what other topics could they be covered, it's such a new and a new topic, right? It's ever evolving. That it's hard to say what else should be covered. I think like when this new thing, when the latest technology will come, then we will know what else should be covered. I think there's a lot of publications out there that they're doing a lot of the great work on it, and there's a lot of content out there. What I think is important in general for media, but that's not necessarily with the topic of data and AI. It's more in general for media. It's that I think it would become increasingly important because there's a lot of content out there that things are constantly fact checked.
Yes.
Because right now, basically, there's a lot of content that's been put out in different blogs with different credibility that basically is not necessarily fact checked, and then people left and right are misinforming people. So, and we've seen that with fake news, with the rise of fake news, basically, which is the new propaganda essentially tool, with fake news in the previous elections. And now we will continue seeing it especially with deep fakes, which is a big thing. So for me, deep fakes, it's something that we need to really tackle, because essentially now everyone can take your expressions from the internet and then basically make video about you saying things that you might have never thought of.
Yeah.
So this is quite scary. But this is more like, I would say, my opinion when it comes to, well, what's the next step for data and AI in the media? And that would be it. More making sure that things are fact checked.
Yes, you're right. And I saw there are so many like open source projects where like people with a slight understanding of technology, they can use the algorithms and do those things, as you said. So it's crazy how like popularized and how available it becomes. Okay, and let's go back to the topic of consciousness you mentioned several times. Obviously, like, we don't know where this thing is going, the general AI, but there are there have been some portraying like the movies and other mediums in popular culture tried to portray the problem of conscious robotics or conscious machine. I don't know if you've seen this movie Ex Machina or Her. Yeah, so how do you think we should look at the consciousness in in technology?
It's funny though that both of them are women, or at least female identified people. Yeah. I mean, we had RoboCop, but he was not not
really conscious.
He was not as evil or conscious as Ex Machina or Hair.
Yeah.
I think and I also am a big fan of Black Mirror. Are you watching? Yeah. So like I think there's like an attempt with fiction, science fiction, with to portray like extreme alternative realities by taking aspects of our lives. So for example, you mentioned Hair. Well, I think like we all lived the scenario that is portrayed in Hair during the lockdown, because basically we only had our computer to talk to, or at least like most of us. So we spend a lot of time talking to people through this. I mean, it's questioning reality essentially. I think it's hard to grasp consciousness when it's so hard to understand your own consciousness as a human, right? So it's so difficult. Like we always, I think what manifests with this type of sci-fi movies in popular culture, TV, and in books is manifest our fear of what will happen when we lose control to the point where the machine will outsmart us. And I think we already reached that point, right? There's a lot of instances where a machine has beat humans at chess, for example, or they have, like this. And I think it's this thing that the black box thing, that basically you have your laptop, you understand how to use it, but you don't know how it works exactly. It's not like you can fix it if you're not a specialist on this. And I think like this is why we're creating all this different, again, back to dualities of us as human versus the machine, instead of actually being ahead of the curve and seeing, okay, this is going to happen, it's happening. How can we be in the best position ourselves to deal with it? How can we basically equip ourselves in a way that would protect us? And also, I mean, I don't want to be like I don't want to come across as a not naysayer or like a pessimist, but you know, the human species evolves, and it has evolved. You know, we didn't exist before the dinosaurs. Then the dinosaurs got extincted. Then we came around slowly. I mean, I'm oversimplifying things,
Yeah,
but
sure.
basically, we evolved out of like the fish, and then we came. Then we become what we are, and we're constantly evolving. And we should be open to accept that maybe what the next human will be a hybrid between
Yes.
technology and humans. What, like, you know, instead of thinking of examples like the ex machina, like a bad thing, maybe we should think about what was it, the ghost in a shell, that kind of example. This type of like cyborg, where you are a human but you're also a computer. And I mean, at some points, like with all of this prosthetics and you know, the prosthetics, where we actually recreating our own organs, and then we add them to ourselves, we are cyborgs, you know. So I think like there's different ways to look at it, and that could be an evolution. And maybe actually in the future the ultimate evolution will be that humans will no longer exist, and that could also be fine. So we can be part of history. I don't know if you've ever seen this is like this Netflix series called Sex and Robots, I think. Love, Sex and Robots, and basically they have an episode.
Japan, something there was. Is it a series or?
It's a series. It's an anime, and basically they had an episode where robots visited like ancient human ruins, and they were like, "Oh my God, look at these humans! They eat."
Okay, no, yeah, I will watch it. Thanks.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, what I'm trying to say here is that I guess with consciousness, I think like it's something that we, as you know, we are still struggling with our own consciousness. So, and I think that this understanding technology from that perspective is because we're trying to also figure out what would happen if you know, if they outnumber us or outsmart us. And I would say instead, like, think of the option of becoming a hybrid, or thinking of an option of embracing what's going on, and just make sure that that we create circumstances that we would want in order to be able to be part of this history.
Yeah, and as you said, like humans are evolving, and all the evolution happens very smoothly, right? So we don't like notice it, and right now we are already becoming in a way hybrid, because we are using that kind of tools which are the extension of our brain, right? Like we don't know something, we can have the access to it instantly almost.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I'm conscious of our time, so I'll just select the last two questions. So most like 100% you've heard of the general basic income concept. Do you think it's going to be a good thing? Do you think we are heading there, or it's never going to be implemented?
Yeah, that's a good question. This conversation has been going on for quite some time now, I believe, since like 2017. I cannot speak about other continents, but being a European and knowing how Europeans are, I think that potentially we could have something like that here in Europe. That there would be something like that implemented in Europe. I mean, I don't know the workings of it. The basic principle for me, and the reason why it makes sense, is because I think with all of this technology, and again, like going about AI, the duality of good or bad, like I think like AI in a way is bringing us a renaissance of the human species, because we can free ourselves from a lot of the mundane daily tasks. And slowly, with automating, we actually need less time to perform tasks that would take a lot of time before. So I see there's two different aspects to it. One is that we will start working less. So we won't need to work 5 days a week. And there's a lot of studies also that show that the best productivity for people would be 3 days a week, actually, because that's when you can really focus, and then you have 4 days to do other stuff. That's yet to be tested. And
It
on the
was
other
tested in Scandinavian countries somewhere, but I think it was like 4-day week, and they found like the results were actually promising, very promising.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for this information. So, for example, this is one aspect. That's one aspect for it. So basically, minimizing the hours that you need to work, and at the same time, and I guess this is a solution mainly for, I don't know if it would be a transitional solution or if it would be a solution generally for a long time. I think this is a solution that makes sense, especially for professions that they're going to be eliminated. So because of this automation, you basically provide this basic income, and essentially with this basic income, people can still support themselves, and potentially they can have more time to acquire new skills. I think one of the fears with AI is that jobs are eliminated. However, like with any kind of transition, any kind of like the Industrial Revolution, any kind of like new era, there's jobs that are eliminated, but there's new jobs that are created. So what we need is to provide an infrastructure where where the new skills can be acquired easily. So I think like this I don't know if the universal basic income would become possible like worldwide, whether it's going to be something that Europe will implement, and whether it's going to be as a transitional phase for the people that do not have the skill set to actually be able to move towards that transition. But for me, a more interesting dialogue is cutting down on hours and actually freeing people to do other stuff, because now with automation, you can do more work in less time, which means that and I think what's important, because of the automation and because of the new skills set that you need to acquire, to actually have more time to spend learning and reading and really researching. So instead of spending time on mundane tasks, spending time on thinking outside the box, reading books, and that's why I think it's also in a way a Renaissance time, right? So in Renaissance, that's what they did. They basically were a well-rounded person, where they were doing a lot of different things, learning from physics and geometry to arts and literature. So I think it's a similar thing.
Yeah. Because they didn't need to work in the field, right? Like they had financial support, so they could focus on learning. So maybe that's the, as you said, like the repetition of what has been in the past. Okay, and the last question, since you are so well accomplished in creating communities, what do you think can be done, or like why is it important to create resilient communities which are open for innovation and supported?
This is actually something that has come, for me, it has come up before COVID-19. There's a podcast that I listened to by some friends of mine. Well, friends, yeah, I know them for a long time. They are Anna Kodrea-Radu. She's a journalist, a freelance journalist who writes for a lot of different publications based out of London, the New York Times being one of them, The Guardian, etc., etc. And then Tiffany Philippou. And they both have paired, and they're doing this podcast called Is This Working? And in one of their episodes, they talked about resilience before the COVID-19, but resilience as a way to endure and be able to continue your, to be able to work to have a career. Because I think that a thing again that has been noticed a lot in millennial culture is the burnout rate. And that the burnout is either because you overwork yourself because you have a startup, or you overwork yourself because you think that you should never stop being productive. So resilience, for me, from that perspective, is this concept that essentially, and they brought an expert to discuss resilience a lot, is this concept of of being able to see your work as not a sprint but a marathon, as something that you need to constantly do over time. And I think like that things like COVID-19 really is testing our resilience. And resilient communities has part of this component. So it's about personal growth and personal development, and how you know what kind of mindset you have, a growth mindset, even to put it even in another scientific that's another scientific actually approach. And I can tell you, you know about the growth mindset, right?
Yes, 6 months mindset and growth mindset.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can share also if you have some great like resources, I can share it under the, you know, in the
exactly.
YouTube.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that perhaps we can also share for people
That would be amazing.
Some of the stuff that we're talking about. So yeah, so because I would like to also share that episode that I'm talking about with building resilient community. They brought this writer who writes a lot about it, so it would be interesting take. But anyway, so on one hand, there is, you know, how can you, for me, so resilience is on one hand like working on your personal development and personal growth. On the other hand, what we've noticed with COVID-19 is that we do not have we're not equipped necessarily with all the things as communities that would help us build resilience. And it's not only being resilient as a founder, which is super important, or, you know, as a in the workforce, but also being resilient to be able to overcome this sort of pandemics, to be prepared in the best way possible, and to be able to overcome this. So for me, like actually for innovation, and one of the things that I would also be looking at personally in the next year is when it comes to founders, how can they build resilience to actually be able to survive in general? Because I think like when you see accelerators and you see incubators, and you notice the numbers, essentially 99% of the companies that they are created fall very fast. And I think that a component for that is the lack of resilience, is the fact that we need to build resilience to be able to be successful. And in order to do that, you actually have to go back to yourself and personal growth and what kind of tools you need to be that way. Because it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's a whole life. It's not like a year of your life. So I think that's why it's important. And I think like right now, at least when it comes to the pandemic, we have up to an extent created for us, we have some tools now that we have to be able to, up to an extent, be resilient for some aspects of it.
Yeah, you're right. And it's really important, as you said, to let the founders or people who are trying to do new things which haven't been done, so they cannot they cannot research it, they cannot refer to the progress, let's say. And also part of the problem is probably created by media, right? Because you only see the good stuff, the overnight successes, and no one tells you how many ups and downs it is, and how many failures you have to go through before you create something which works.
Exactly.
So
that's a good way. I think it's a good way to end this, because I think resilience is definitely one of the most important things of our time now. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Elena. It was really, really great, and I hope many people will find it useful as well. I did.
Hope so. Yeah, thanks very much for the invitation, and for having this outlet for people to talk about this type of topics.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I will share the resources you will send me.
Yes, exactly. I will provide the resources and you can share them under.
Thanks so much. Have a lovely Sunday.
You too. Bye.
Ευχαριστώ.